Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to another episode of The Ways We Move. We're in season 2. This is our second year of the podcast that highlights innovative mobility solutions and the people behind them. So, up until now, I've invited people I had invited about a year ago just to get their take on where the industry is a year later. And this guest on our podcast is someone I absolutely love to talk to. She's so delightful, her energy, her enthusiasm, but mostly the kind of professional she is in the industry, Sarah Nilsson. So last year when Sarah came on the podcast, her video camera wasn't working. This time it was working a little bit better. And you'll get to hear about Sarah's incredible past. First of all, she is a lawyer. She's a teacher at Embry-Riddle in Arizona, and she has a wonderful class that helps the new students at Embry-Riddle over there understand advanced air mobility. In about 3 months, they get to come up with an entire company. And we are some of the judges who get to listen to them and say, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Yay, you got it. Bingo. So listen to Sarah. She's also the person behind the International Law and Drone ebook. That's a living book. It gets updated frequently. You really need to look at it. And she talks about it more in the podcast. We will put something where you can go and find it. But if you Google Sarah Nilsson International Drone ebook, I'm pretty sure you'll find it. But we'll try to give you the exact link. Anyway, hope you enjoy this podcast. Sarah is definitely part of our special podcast segment on women in mobility. She is a pilot. She flies herself. She understands it. And you can definitely feel the passion behind her. So as always, please like and subscribe. This helps us a lot continue to bring you good quality, hopefully good quality and free information on what's happening in innovative mobility solutions. We're still open up to find more sponsors to help us, with the gear and all that kind of good stuff and everything until Advanced Air Mobility will become operational. And we're hoping in about less than 5 years from now. So if you know anyone who's interested in sponsoring the show or somebody who's interested in the podcast, please also share and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you think, what is happening in your world. How do you understand what we now call advanced air mobility, what I still call electric air mobility? Hope you enjoy it. And here's Sarah. Well, Sarah, welcome back. Almost a year later on our podcast, The Ways We Move, where we talk about innovative mobility solutions and the people behind it. And if I remember well, last time the video didn't work, so people did not get to see you, but only to hear you. So welcome back. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in your world. You're a teacher at Embry-Riddle. I was very fortunate to have been on one of your classes as one of the judges, and that was really exciting. We also know a lot of the same people. Tell us what's going on a year later in advanced air mobility and in aviation in general.
Well, thank you for having me, Nick. And yes, so what's been going on a lot? I can't believe how time flies. This is my third iteration of my advanced air mobility class at Embry-Riddle. And as you
Wow.
know, because you were one of the judges, the students there, they pair off into groups right at the very
Yes.
beginning of the semester. And they
Yes.
work on a project to bring a hypothetical fictional company to fruition from start to finish, from creating the corporation to picking the location, picking the aircraft, planning planning the electric energy brought in, and then they go ahead and present at the end of the semester in April. So this is the third year, and it's actually going really well
Wow.
because Archer and Joby are very close to getting certified. Beta's already got their eSTOL doing fine, and so the students have absolutely no problem finding vehicles.
Good.
And now with the FAA's
Yes.
plan with their airman certification standards for private through ATP in a powered lift, that's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
So the students are excited. We have the AAM strategy the FAA put out in December, and that's going really well, helping them plan the vision. I'll be honest, as a pilot myself, it's very fun to see that this is a new potential job for everybody where they can have the comfort of staying home every night, because the legs are short legs. They're not gone
Mm.
like the regular airline pilot life, where they're gone on trips and away from home so much. So they're excited about that, opening up a whole bunch of different job openings when they come out of Riddle in a couple of 3 or 4 years. And then the thing that they're always skeptical about is this, when we transition to autonomous AAM. But I
Yes.
keep telling them that, yes, the vision might be for the next 10 years, but it won't happen in 10 years, I don't think. I think we have a ways to go with piloted AAM at the moment. So that's the exciting parts of my day, as well as teaching aviation law, of course, and drone law.
Yeah, which we'll talk about that because obviously that's very important. A lot of different pieces are finally coming into focus in advanced air mobility, insurance, and fire safety, and all of that. Thankfully, you just said something that's very interesting, and it's my second disruptive technology in the mobility industry that I'm watching. The first one was electric vehicles, and now, of course, advanced air mobility. And there are a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels. One of which is the over enthusiasm, and yes, we'll be certified this year. Yes, we'll be doing this in 2 to 3 to 4 years. And of course, it's always at least a decade. And in aviation, everything is usually about a decade before it happens because, well, safety is paramount and it's the first thing on our minds in the morning and less things on our minds in the evening. You made a really good point because you wrapped it up really well. A lot of things have happened last year. Mostly in the United States, the government has a more rational now plan of approaching the industry. The FAA is on board. BV Loss 2 just started to go in the right direction, despite some criticism, and obviously it needs to be tweaked. And so it's interesting to hear about your students. And I have to say one thing: I was so impressed last year because these guys. And you said that it took them only 3 months to come up with these business cases.
They start in January. We started our class last week. So by April, I think it's the 17th, we should be having our judges, such as yourself and Tony and Clint and a few others. Anyone listening to the show, if you work in AAM and you'd like to be a judge, just reach out to me. That would be absolutely amazing. But yes, in April, they have to culminate their project before the end of semester. So yeah, they only have a few months to go from not knowing anything to, here's a company we'd like to start to provide a service we think people need, and here's how we're going to do it. It's awesome.
I was really surprised with the level of maturity in the presentation, how very well thought out it was. Of course, I mean you can't think of everything. Obviously, not even we can't do it. It's such a new industry, obviously. But how well they did it, and it really surprised me that they had only done that for 3 months. So congratulations, because obviously you're the one who's pushing it and making it happen. And indeed, like Sarah said, if you are a part of the industry and you would like to be one of the judges for what Sarah's doing with Embry-Riddle, well worth it. It's an amazing way to see this new talent and to also help them usher them into our industry, obviously. So tell me a little bit about everything else that's happening in your life, because you're such a multifaceted person, and you're such a perfect person for our segment, Women in Mobility. You not only teach AAM class, but you're also involved on the law aspect of all of this, and also the drone. So tell us a little bit about anything happening on the law aspect of aviation, especially as it pertains to advanced air mobility.
Yes. So I'm always on the edge of what's going on in the world for a couple of reasons. Aside from the fact that I'm just a big geek about it, it's nice that it actually pays my wages. We had one of our students who's now an employee of ours win. We have to give a shout out to Henry. And then we had a beautiful award ceremony in December where we received one of their posters signed by all the race winners. And now that hangs like literally 3 feet from my office door out on campus. So that's pretty exciting.
Excellent.
In conjunction with that, as you know, I keep my Drones and Now AAM Across the World book, the ebook, updated. So that's all full of good stuff that relates to AAM in every aspect, in every AAM news all around the world. So we keep tabs on everything going on in Dubai. We also keep tabs around the US. There's certain places like Chicago and Florida and Miami and Orlando and all the places where Texas as well, where they're starting to move towards the Vertiport scene. And so that's very exciting. Then last year, we were very excited to see the collaboration between the 5 nations, the US,
Yes.
Canada,
Yes.
Australia, New Zealand, and the UK when it comes to accepting each other's aircraft certification requirements. That was exciting stuff in the law. That collaboration needs to happen so that these eVTOLs
Yeah.
that are built can be shared across the world and not just remain in one little silo over here. So that was really cool last year. And then in conjunction with that, of course, you know, the BVLOS, NPRM, and everything else around that, and the plans to move that forward, and then just a lot of fun things happening. And then I teach the global drone law class. So we talk about the drone laws and how they're maturing around the world and all the use cases. My students did in that class last year, did some awesome presentations where it came to use cases for drone deliveries and such across the world. It was just amazing. And then I teach an aviation law class. So, you know, we've had a lot of exciting things in the crewed pilot world, you know, like the
Yes.
mosaic rules and all that stuff. So, you know, it's fun to be a professor of all of that goodness and then write about it and update the book and then just talk about it. And then last year I got to volunteer a whole bunch with the FAA safety team because that's my other passion.
Good.
Educating pilots around the country. And so last year I got to share via Zoom across the nation. It wasn't just for the Arizona pilots, it was across the nation. And that was really fun doing that. And I had Jonathan Ruprecht also with me on that, on the one for part 137.
Oh, yeah.
That was really, really exciting. So yeah, my days are never boring.
I know it's really hard to introduce you because it's like, well, she does this, she does that, she does this, she does that, she does a lot of different things. And so one question I wanted to ask you, because that's something that we talk about a lot with a lot of the people on the podcast, is it's true there is a sort of better, I don't want to say the word integration, but better working across the aisle, not simply within the FAA, but also with EASA, also with ICAO and everything. And you're right, last year, there is the beginning of multi-nations starting to work together towards a more solidified, what do they call them? Shadow agreements, right? Or that's one of the terms that we use. We know that in Japan, JCAB also has shadow agreements with the FAA, EASA has, et cetera, so on and so forth. But we need to see something that's a little bit more formalized. So tell us a little bit more about that. Is it 5 nations so far, obviously? Is it going to grow a little bit more? What's happening on a very international view that you see it from your point of view?
Well, that's the thing. It's designed to be these 5 nations first, but the intent is for it to grow. The issue that came up was just the different rules we use for certification.
Yeah.
The US and Canada use Part 21 for a lot of the stuff. However, in the UK, it's a little bit different. They have EASA rules they follow. And so
Yep.
there was a little disconnect between that. And
Yep.
so when they iron out all those kinks and kind of agree on what standards they're going to, you know, allow and reciprocate with, I think we'll see a lot more. But that is a work in progress. That is definitely, that first document is a living document they're going to be updating. So it's very fascinating. I think somewhere out on my YouTube channel, I have probably an hour-long talk about that document in very great detail. But yeah,
Okay.
that was something I did last summer.
Yeah, we'll link to it if I remember. We'll link to it. We'll put the link here, and so that
Yeah,
people can go
yeah.
and see. But you're right. I think one of the stories that I'll always remember is, you know how EASA had the symbol for the vertipad, the landing by the TLOF, and the FAA had one. And by really working together, they decided to, just use the same symbol everywhere. And I think that was one step in the right direction. And of course, ICAO's role is very important here. And I think ICAO's role is going to grow even more and more because to me, at least, it seems like that's the international mutual platform. And I know that the world of airports are very, very, very complicated, especially on an international level. But you're right. I think it is an embryo. It's starting out well. It's a good foundation, and it will only grow. It'll be also interesting to see what China does and how China continues to evolve, despite the fact that yes, it is an island unto itself. There's still things that we can glean for it. I mean, brilliant to come up with a title of low altitude economy. Whoever thought of that one? I
Yes.
just tip my hat to you.
It makes sense because UTM in the United States is somewhat similar. You know, the eVTOLs are planning to be around 5,000 feet and everything below that for the drones. So it just makes sense that UTM in this country merging with ATM is going to be a challenge, especially with our $12.5 billion revamp of the air traffic control system that was announced last year. That's going to be
Yep.
interesting to see how that works, because we need to modernize in the sense that communication needs to be digital, because a lot of these
Yes.
autonomous vehicles don't have voice communication like us pilots in the cockpit, talking on the radio.
Yep.
So there's got to be development in that range, definitely. But since you mentioned ICAO, last year we had the first AAM conference at ICAO, and obviously I couldn't be there for 4 days. Our President Butler from Embry-Riddle was there, and he gave one of the talks. But I'm the nerd that watches ICAO TV. I don't know about anyone else, but I watched the entire 4 days recorded on ICAO TV. Very exciting. It'll be really, really exciting to see this year's, if they follow it up this year with an AAM International Symposium. That would be something to watch, because I've got my eye on eVair mobility at the moment. I think they'll be the ones
Yes.
that we should be watching at the moment, not just Archer and Joby, but yeah, it's exciting times. I mean, Archer, Joby, and Beta, they're my favorites. Not so sure about Whisk. I know Whisk is good, but the whole idea as a pilot that it starts out autonomous like EHang, I don't know. I have my reservations about that.
Yeah, I think we all have a lot of questions about that. The way I look at Whisk is, it's good. It will eventually be like that. Kudos for sticking to your guns and saying we're just going to go straight to autonomous. And that makes me think, at the very least, that's not tomorrow. That's going to be easily a decade away before we even start to see anything like that. So it's just a slow process. And also the question, Boeing is also backing Whisk, which of course we all know that Airbus and Boeing are very interested in autonomous aircraft technology. So how does that leave both companies working together? You mentioned something about the merging of UTM and ATM, or the traditional way of how we used to call it. Now it's called very different ways. But I remember in 2017, Airbus had a really wonderful blue plan or something like that, where they really, from 0 feet to 72,000 feet, had a well integrated air traffic management platform. And Boeing also had something similar. But one thing that I've noticed the last 5-6 years is we haven't heard from them at all when it comes to that. And that's something I'd love to get them on the show and talk about. How do you see all of this working? Because truly we only hear about how will advanced air mobility fit into the airspace, but we rarely hear how does aviation welcome advanced air mobility into its space. And that's a question that's been burning on my tongue for a long time now.
Well, the initial ones are going to be just pilots doing what general aviation pilots always have done. So
Yes.
under Part 135, nothing crazy and spectacular with that. I think the interesting part will be coming when the pilots get removed out of the equation. That's the real how things in ATM are going to change. But yeah.
And you're right. I think it's going to be incremental. Obviously, you're right. You said something in the very beginning that was interesting, is unlike working for United, Delta, American, where you fly for 4 hours across the country, then you have to sleep over if it's a late flight or something like that. These flights are going to be local. You'll be driving back home. You'll be sleeping in your own bed. And that's something that must be very exciting for I would assume, a lot of pilots, because it gets lonely being in these hotels far away from your family and from your friends and all that good stuff. So I'm excited about that too. That's going to breed a new generation of pilots. But
that too, but I'm also but I'm also envisioning the time building pilots like to do before they get that lovely Part 121 job. That time building normally exists around CFIing here, and you're home every night, but there's another way now that you can get that type of time and still be home every night. So I'm not sure if that's going to hurt our shortage of flight instructors, or maybe just increase the number of students we put out, because according to Part 135, you just need 500 hours and a type rating in one of the eVTOLs and you're good to go. So that opens up a whole nother thing, that pilots usually were CFIs for the first 1,000 hours or so. So exciting. Yeah, that's very interesting.
You're right. That's an interesting point, because I'm always thinking of those pilots who now have to retire or want to retire. Well, hey, now you can actually Go fly an eVTOL or an eSTOL or an eCTOL right around your neighborhood. You don't have to go that far. Sure, the pay is not going to be the same, but hey, you're home every evening. There's a lot of convenience around that. But you're also right. I think moving into full autonomy is not going to happen just like that. A lot of these pilots will be asked to come to a centralized location where they can monitor the flights, where they can actually work on remote flying at first, or not autonomous, but automated, and so on and so forth, until we do become eventually all Star Trek-like automated. But that's going to be a long time. Not automated, but autonomous. That's going to take a while. Hopefully within our lifetime.
I don't know. I'm getting on in yours.
Yeah, I think too. I always joke. I used to have hair when I started all of this. Now it's thinning out pretty quickly. So tell us a little bit more also about your drone book. I think people need to know what you've been working on. Tell us about it, because you've already did last time, but it would be a good refresher right now.
Yeah. So back in 2023, Embry-Riddle decided they have a Office of Open Education Resources at the Daytona headquarters, and they decided that it would be a good endeavor to put something together for the students, because I teach, back then I only taught the drone law, global drone law, but now I'm doing AAM as well, and that's why the book has morphed into AAM as well as drones. They thought it'd be a good idea to put all that information into a textbook. And so because it's an ebook, it's beautiful because I can go in and update it every time I want to. It's not like my printed books that I've written and still write, that you put out once every 5 years, and then they're pretty much need updating before they even hit the printing press, because editing takes so long. But the ebook is great, and there's pages for every state in the US and every state's city and local laws for drones, and then an advanced air mobility. Now we have states that have already got statutes on the books, city codes, city ordinances on there for AAM. It's amazing. You'll see, like, for example, City of Orlando they have ordinances for vertiports, and
Yes.
they're not alone. There's multiple cities and counties across the nation. But this book has pages for every state in the country, every country in the world, and I broke it down so it starts off with a little background as to the government, so that people can understand how the rules and where they come from, and that way, because as a lawyer, you're always interested in, well, what kind of government is it, and who makes the rules, and who's in charge of their version of the FAA. And so and then it goes into their air traffic control, because some countries take air traffic control out of the federal government's hands and have private companies run air traffic control. They have separate companies, whereas we in the US keep air traffic control with our FAA as one entity.
Yes.
75
ATC,
countries
together.
in the world don't do that. And so I launch into that so the students can realize if there's a different entity that works for air traffic control separate from their civil aviation authority. And then I get into the drone laws, and then I have a section now for everywhere that's advanced air mobility laws, because some countries have very well developed advanced air mobility laws already. You just have to go to, let's say, United Arab Emirates, and they have, I don't know, 5-6 documents just for AAM. AAM autonomous, AAM with passengers,
That's
AAM
right.
with cargo. I mean, it just goes on. And then I thought what would be really neat, since AAM is new, a lot of people I talk to on the street have no clue what AAM even stands for. Yep. So I put in an AAM news under each country, and there's an AAM news chapter. So when I read the news every morning on my email, I usually end up going, oh, look, this happened. For example, a week ago, reading through, and Tel Aviv in Israel, they're putting in a new vertiport. Well, look at that. So what do? I go over to my AAM news in the ebook under Israel and link that news article. So when people go to the AAM news, they go, oh, look, there's something going on in Israel. And here's what happens in 26, here's what's happened in 25. And it goes all the way back to probably 23 for AAM, because that's when I started the news piece. So yeah. So the book is a living document. Don't ever print it, because I don't even know how many pages is in it now. It's probably in the millions. But the cool part is it's updated all the time. My students help me. My students will come to class and go, hey, did you hear this? And I'm like, actually, no, I did not. send me the link. And then what I do for my students to boost them, their resumes and help them with career, I usually acknowledge them in the acknowledgement section if they've
Good.
added to the book and the body of knowledge. And so
Good.
they like that, because then they can say, oh, I took a photo of an eVTOL somewhere in the world. I was at a conference and here it is in the book, and their credits. And so it's really, they get involved with that, and they get involved with helping me edit and keeping the links fresh, which is the bane of my existence, because links go bad all the time in these
Oh,
government
yes.
websites. And so
Oh, yes.
whenever we're hitting a chapter and we're in the book, they'll go, well, the link for this went down and here's the new link. And so we'll fix it. And that's the cool part about the ebook. We can fix it right then and there, and we have it fresh as much as we can all the time. So I love that. I love that about it. It's the best thing Embry-Riddle has ever done with me, having me do this ebook. Love
So
it.
tell us, where can people find the ebook? That would be important to say.
Just Google drones and AAM across the world. We're number one on Google. If you
Perfect.
hit drones and AAM across the world and my name, it's probably going to come up there right at the very top. And just
Okay.
bookmark the page. Yeah.
And just keep on going to it. Another way to check for those bad links is I started using AI to go, hey, just go and check out this document. Which link still works, which ones don't, and it's been really helpful.
That's a
Not
great
always perfect,
idea.
obviously, but it helps me get rid of the heavy data that I don't want to have to plug through. So anyway, just a suggestion, because
I think
it's
we should
become
do
very
that.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, Claude specifically is really good with that, very detail oriented.
Okay.
So Perplexity is great for research, and so on and so forth. But anyway, this is another conversation to be had, is the role of AI in this
Oh my
industry.
gosh. Yes.
And yeah, it's shaping up. It's starting to happen, but there's still a lot of questions unanswered so far. Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about what is it? I mean, I'm an old teacher, right? So my first thought is, wow, teaching AAM at a university, especially such a reputable university as yours, what does it take to even come up with a curriculum like that, considering that AAM is, well, we're no longer in the infancy. Let's say we're in the teenage years right now. It must not be that easy to build a curriculum on an industry that's A, growing, B, morphing, and C, we still don't have all the certifications and requirements yet. So tell us a little bit about how do you approach that, and so that your students can, or potential students can, go up and go, I want to be in her class.
Well, about 3 years ago when I started this, put together in my pilot brain and my lawyer brain, I put together, if I were new to the industry and I wanted to know all of this stuff because I just now graduated from Embry-Riddle, well, I mean, I did back in, 2003. If I wanted to do that and be a good fit for any company hiring me, what would I need to know to impress my people on the interview and get the job? So in my brain, I started backtracking. So, okay, I want the students to be able to graduate and have an idea of where they fit in the industry. So in my back of my brain, I went, okay, so they need to show up, obviously knowing the pilot side. And so that's went into all the regs that had to do with the SFAR and getting the ACS together so that they knew what they needed to do for their type rating. And then I went, okay, so that's one piece. Now, what do they need to know about infrastructure? Well, that opened a whole new can of worms, because you don't just have the Vertiport and the engineering brief, but you also have the energy, where that's coming from. You also have TSA and what their thoughts are on that. So that opens up that, but there's more, because you don't live in a bubble. You have to connect to other modes of transportation. Yes. So they needed to understand all of that. And then they had to understand a little bit about the customer who wants comfort and convenience. You have to know about, the amenities you have to put in place, the parking spaces, the food, the entertainment, perhaps, just the creature comforts. But it gets bigger than that, because now you're talking about the zoning of the land and the city councils. And then it gets bigger than that, because now you have other laws that are environmental laws, because it just mushroomed and mushroomed and mushroomed. And of course, as pilots, they always learn about the airspace and what the FAA wants to do with the corridors and all this stuff and everything that's in Innovate 28. And then then you have to talk about weather, because we really don't talk a
Yes.
whole lot about weather, but drone delivery needs some kind of, and this is where Clint comes in, and I love it. So we talk about that, and we talk about True Weather, because that's another company that's amazing.
Don
Don.
Birchoff, he's going to
And
be, he's actually going to be right before you because he tells us a lot about exactly what you're saying. I'm so glad you
right, so
mentioned it.
you need to
Yes.
have the weather, and then how are they going to be reporting it? Are we going to gather weather from the equipment themselves as they're flying in real time? I mean, are there going to be multiple weather stations all over the city? I mean, who knows? So there's
Yes.
all of that, right? And then
Yes.
the best part of this is the social aspect, because you have to,
Yes.
how does the actual consumer feel about all this? I mean, are they
Yeah.
comfortable in a small airplane like this? I mean, I know from flying my own small aircraft, I even have friends who are afraid to fly, who won't fly with me. And then I have the diehards that, oh, you're going to go fly over for breakfast? Let me come with you,
Yes.
It goes from one extreme to the other. And so
Yes.
how do people fit in with that? And so, I mean, the class became so, that's how I prepare. So I prepared all these modules. I start off with the business module, because a lot of people
Yes.
don't understand business formation. And then more than business formation, why you're picking a Corp C or an S Corp or a LLC, they don't understand also how to fund it. And we all know that 99% of startups go under because, funding. And you're not getting any return on investment. And so eventually your investors are just like, okay, we're not funding this anymore. And so we talk about that in the first section. And then we go into the aircraft, and we go through all the gamut of all the different vehicles that have been produced so far. I mean, last year we quit talking about Lilium because that stopped. We quit talking about Volocopter because we're waiting for that to come back. And so we go through all of the aircraft changes, and then we do the infrastructure, we do the weather, we do the regs, we do the airspace.
Yes.
By the time we're done in April, hopefully they see the big picture and they can put it all together. In addition, we put the safety in there. And I'm very excited when it comes to safety, because last year we got an idea from, I don't want to get this wrong, Skyports. They have this Vertiport that's on a berm. And if there's any kind of, well, first off, the berm is designed to break up the outwash, downwash. So you have less of an area that you need. And then it also has that submergible thing, because we know just dunking it in water will allow for the batteries, if there's a fire, to just eventually quit. So that, we talk about that because that's kind of new. That just started last year.
Yeah, and by the way, that's Skyports with a Z. That's Clem Newton Brown, not
Yes.
to be confused with the other Skyports. Absolutely,
Yes,
you're right. Absolutely.
That's why I said, am I getting this right? Because there's, two kinds. So that's how I prepared. And then what I do every year that I teach it is I update all the sources, because I don't want them more than a year old, because things change, in the industry. Companies go out of business, people change their ideas. We've had iterations of engineering brief that changed, and now it's a subset of a heliport. Vertiport's a subset of a heliport. And so that whole thing changed. And so the advisory circulars change. And so every year, it's just a question of updating all the sources that we use to, have the students present at the end of the semester all their grandiose thoughts. So that's how I came up with the curriculum. And then I also collaborated with my cohort in Daytona Beach. He's also teaching, Kevin, and he's teaching an AAM intro class like mine. And he was kind enough to share his resources 3 years ago. And I verified I had most of those, and some I did not have, and some I thought were a little too outside of the scope of what I wanted to do with this class project. And so, collaboration and just networking. And that's kind of how I went about making my curriculum. And then, of course, it goes through several channels at Embry-Riddle and gets approved and, gets the blessing of the curriculum committee and the blessing of, everybody up the chain. But yeah, exciting times. And in fact, this year, I've been working on a new class that goes live in August that I've not taught in my time at Riddle, but it is taught at the other campus. And that's aviation legislation, which is a history class of how the legislation came about. And I absolutely love it, because I don't think my students at Riddle get enough aviation history. So this class is so exciting, because it starts out in I don't know, 1890, and it just works its way all the way to today. And it's just, I'm excited. This goes live for my first time in August. So this school year is going to be exciting for me because I always like teaching new things.
It sounds like it. Your enthusiasm is definitely palpable, and you're right. I think history is so important, especially in disruptive technologies and industries such as ours, where understanding what happened before, why we're here today, really helps paving the way to go forward. I'm also really excited about everything that you said because I used to be a teacher, so I know a lot about writing curricula and all of that good stuff. And especially being on the infrastructure side of things, I'm always a little annoyed that we're focusing way too much on the aircraft and not where they're going to be operating from, because that's the most important part. Where do they take off? Where do they land? How does that done safely? By the way, from that passenger opening that terminal door in a vertiport or in a multiport, doesn't matter. But what is the experience? What kind of food, teas that, and this is probably where AI is going to play a role in the near future, where we know that, hey, Sarah likes to drink black tea, but Jim Bob here likes coffee, so you need to plan for all of that. You alluded to the energy equation, which all of our numbers are mind-boggling. We're thinking 10 to 50 megawatt of power reliably at 5 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon, which to this day we know no utilities can A, generate, B, transport. So all of these things are things that we consider and we talk about. And so I wanted to tell you, because I don't know if I've ever told you, but we finally came up with Clint and Rex and a lot of other people with the AAM masterclass. And this is a 3-year long process of talking and thinking about what we could do and everything. And I had so much fun finally writing a curriculum for this class where indeed we touch on all of these specific aspects. And it's exciting. It's super exciting. But I really like what you said about the history part. And that's something I'd be interested in finding out more about, is what led us to do all the things that we have today. The Swiss cheese slice, theory of making sure nothing aligns to have that perfect storm. Those are very important points that we need to talk about more. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. Hopefully one day I'll teach another class. I mean, well, we will, by the way, in September. We're going to be in Vancouver. So, but I'd love to do more teaching. That's a lot of fun too. Tell us a little bit more about what's your motivation? What gets you out of bed in the morning? I mean, you are definitely a dynamo of sorts. You do so many things. You have a high level of energy and motivation. What is Sarah's motivation out there?
I've always loved flying. Anything that flies has always been fascinating to me. And it's kind of crazy because I didn't even know that this was a thing until I got into the airplane for the first time, and my CFI on the right seat, and I'm taking off, looking down and going, whoa, I think I'm home. And that was it. That's literally why I do what I do, why I went to school to get my degrees, and why I only thought if I did law, it would be aviation related, because I have absolutely no interest in criminal or divorce law or any of that jazz. So yeah, everything that has to do with flying, and it's not just flying on Earth, it's anything to do with space too. I'm the
Yeah.
biggest geek on that. I only get to
Yes.
teach one chapter on space law in my aviation law class, but if I had more time and there was like another of me, I would probably want to teach space law full time as well, because I just think that's fascinating too. I mean, we're going to plan for the Artemis generation, and how are we going to
Yes. Right.
handle any kind of dispute on the moon or Mars or anywhere, and how does that look? How does that look, when you have a new planet to colonize? I mean, geez. I mean, I'm a big
Yeah.
Trekkie fan,
That's
so that's, to me,
I.
is the next thing.
Me
So
too.
yeah, that's what
Huge.
gets me up in the morning. I look at the stars at night and go, dang, wouldn't it be cool if I could just hop over and then jump on another planet for a while and check it out and then come home and talk about it? Yeah. So definitely, if I had, oodles of cash lying around, I'd be signing up for Virgin Galactic when they get back up in the air,
Yep. Yep.
and or, SpaceX and Blue Origin, either one. I'm not picky. I
I
just
don't
want to
care.
leave the planet, look at the blue
Yes.
Earth, and then land somewhere else and go, dang, this galaxy is amazing. And then, rinse and repeat. Only I don't have that many years left, so I'm not really sure how long that's going to be.
I know. I think at the very least, what I'd settled for is a zero G airplane, like a 737 or an A320, like they have, and just experience that weightlessness moment. Just that. Just that.
No,
If anything else.
I want to put my boot in the regolith is what I want to do.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I hear you. Yeah, create a
Yes.
warp bubble and just go see what's out there. Huh? Wouldn't that be fun? Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for coming back for a second time. This is season 2 of The Ways We Move. So we were very excited. Your enthusiasm is amazing too. It's so palpable. You can feel it. I'd love to go back 30 years and be one of your students. I think that would be fantastic. I'd love to. I'm looking forward to April when we're going to see what you guys have been working on. I think Don would be an amazing judge too, by the way, for the class. Yeah, we will. We will. I'll talk to him after this and say, hey, I got something for you. Absolutely. And everybody else, please like, share, and subscribe. What do you think? What do you think about advanced air mobility, especially after having heard Sarah? And especially when it comes to education, what do you think is needed? What is your take on all of that? And Sarah, maybe like one very last word. What would you like people to walk away from with today? Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think there are a lot of opportunities and they will find a lot of fun jumping into these new disruptive technologies and industries that we have today. Sarah, thank you very much for being with us today. And I certainly look forward to having you back again on the podcast at some later point. Thank you. Bye-bye.